Hello, my name is Yujin from Sogang University in South Korea. I'm English. I'm PhD student in English department. Today I will talk about limited leisure images of America in Korean English textbooks. Here is the structure of my research paper: introduction, literature review, research question, materials, research methods, research conclusion, and limitation, future direction. Introduction. Pandemics worldwide have taken away the freedom of the movement from people. The restraint of space has a significant impact on education, especially the transition from public education to online classes, which has created new spaces and various instructional media. Online space creates a diverse learning environment that transcends time and space, bringing vast amounts of information and exchanges. Nevertheless, the English classes presented in Korean public education do not seem to reflect such diversity. In other words, English textbooks in South Korea suggest the image of America as restricted in the aspect of racial diversity. Here I say image of America because Korean English education is basically based on American English, and the English learning activities in the textbooks are mainly accompanied by the designated of the American culture. Language is an important tool for the structuring the consciousness, in that language is a sort of product of society, culture, and politics. Especially in Korea, English is necessary for students because it is regarded as an essential ability to learn as a foreign language. At this point, the impact of English textbooks on learners of English is significant. Textbooks have a direct impact on the course because English education at school sites is centered on textbooks. Therefore, learners who learn English through the textbooks are easily exposed to the ideology inherent in the textbooks because they learn not only language but also culture. According to this issue, this paper tries to discuss the limited image of America related to the racial issues in the English textbooks in South Korea for secondary education. The research conducts a visual analysis to elaborate how the textbooks manifest the image of America and an empirical approach to examine how this education influences the students carrying out surveys. Thus, this study aims to explore the limited racial image of America in the Korean English language curriculum and the cultural impact that this education has on learners. Literature review. The Korean curriculum has undergone a tour of the 7 reorganizations since 1954. The current curriculum is called the 7th curriculum, which is from 2009. From the 7th curriculum, the Korean English curriculum corrected and supplemented its problems, and the language materials of revised textbooks pursue the considering the cognitive level of learners and considering the topics and the language practice. And English textbooks should not only contain the accurate learning in terms of the language, but also to contribute to the developing proper values. This is also why research is needed to critically reflect on the perspectives contained in the English textbooks. There have been constant questions about how many stereotypes and preconceptions Korean English textbooks contain about race and ethnicity. It has also been suggested that the Korean English textbooks should be written from a new perspective because the role and influence of the textbooks are important enough to internalize the social and the moral system of ruling classes as a mean of the education. Overall, similar studies in Korea, which analyzed the racist elements of the textbooks, selected only some areas of English textbooks or learning activities by selecting one grade in the middle school or high school. Furthermore, since the revised curriculum in 2009, the revised high school textbooks have not been studied for 3 grades. Therefore, the study seeks to fill the gap between the academic and the field in the study of the textbooks and the cultural learning, which is the instructional media. Research questions. First, how the textbooks present the cultural image of the English, America. And the second, how are students consuming the image of the America from the textbooks? And the last thing is, how can this consumption affect the students' cultural background? From these questions, research questions, the materials of the study will focus on the secondary English textbooks with the 2009 revision designated in Korea. The 7th curriculum. This course is a revised curriculum that is currently being used primarily in the field of the education. The English language of the Korean public education follows the following curriculum: common courses, general selection, career choice, and plus specialized subjects. The publisher in charge of the textbook is the 능률, 시사, 천재, 기상, 동화. In addition, 금성 and 지학 publishing company wrote English and English first. This paper aims to adopt a common course of first-year English and a general selection English first textbook for secondary year and the third-year courses, and additionally, the culture of English-speaking countries textbook in the process of the learning English-speaking culture. The publisher of each textbooks were based on the most common usage. Therefore, what I chose to research is English from 천재, high school English from 천재, and English first from the 능률, and last thing is the culture of English-speaking countries by 능률. Research methods. This research attempts visual analysis to explore the racial image that appears in textbooks. Although the composition of the textbook varies slightly in detail, most of them are composed of the 4 major parts: introduction, dialogue for communication, body for reading, and cooperative tasks. The analysis criteria determine the frequency of the images being exposed. This is because exposure of the positive or negative images to a particular race can give learners a particular images or bias. The analysis proceeds in the following steps. First, a person who appears in the image of the introduction part representing the entire content in each unit of the textbook. Second, characters of the conversation part. Third, a dependent image of the particular race revealed in the body part. And the last fourth is a character inserted in the cooperative task part. However, illustrations, photographs, and images of the unclear or ambiguous pictures were excluded when the racial classification was ambiguous. And then the research conducts a survey as part of the empirical study to analyze how the representation of images in the textbooks makes learners acquire cultural recognition. The survey is intended to obtain the information about social and the cultural backgrounds and the state of the critical consumer awareness. Specifically, the study is carried out with the research questions. First, how children are consuming the image of the English America from the textbooks, and how this consumption affects the children's cultural factors. So the question structure of the survey is as follows, like this, as you can see in the presentation. So the first thing is the basic information. Second thing is the range of the awareness of racism. And third thing is the racism-related content consumption experience. And the fourth is racism awareness and experience in the English textbooks. Third is racism could be embedded embedded in the English textbooks. After investigating the actual statement of the student perception of racism, the study attempts to retouch campaign as a critical pedagogy that makes the students improve their recognition. Through this process, this research aims to enable learners to actively and critically accept tests. This research would like to discuss how textbooks, the most basic education media, present the image of America. Research. The result of the study is the following. The image, 60% of white people, 29% of the non-white people, and 11% of the uncertainty. It has more than twice the proportion of the white people than that of the non-white people. Furthermore, in the aspect of not only the image but also jobs, the results shows a significant difference between the non-white and white people. Non-white people were portrayed as the 70 types of the occupations, while white people were portrayed as the 31 types of the occupations. In addition, the great white people in the textbooks could see in the various fields such as the professionals, inventors, and politicians, but non-white people rarely appear in the textbooks, and even those are limited fields such as the artists and human rights activists. The stereotype of the race is a kind of the generalized belief that distinguishes the one race from another and includes both the positive and the negative. The bias is based on the fixed ideas are formed by the excessive generalization, so they do not change well by the exaggerating the characteristics of for one race. In order to prevent the racial prejudice continuing to include positive images and contents of the various races in textbooks can lead to decrease in racial prejudice. For individual learners, race bias is further reduced if there is frequent actual contact or the cooperative interaction with others. Survey. This research surveyed students about the critical consumption awareness. The object of the survey is a high school student who is consuming the context directly. As you can see in the presentation, 94 out of the 147 students in the school said they were interested in racism. However, when asked if they were looking for the ethical controversy before consuming the cultural content, only 36 students said yes. From this, we can see that the students lack the critical consumption awareness of the cultural content. As many as the 125 out of the 147 students answered no when asked, have you ever felt racism in the English textbooks? This shows that the most of the students do not recognize the racism in the English textbooks. The survey found that 73% of the students know the racism was bad and were interested in the related cases, but only 25% of the students were critically consuming the cultural content. Through this, we can know that racism could be embedded in the textbooks, that there was a lack of critical consumption awareness. In order to keep from causing this racism bias, textbooks should provide a balanced presentation of the various races. Critical literacy. Critical pedagogy is seriously address the impact on the inequality related to racial, class, gender on the second language teaching and the learning, including the relationship of the socially unequal forces. Critical pedagogists note whose interest the education represents in terms of the social, political, and the cultural power, and the call for critical reflection on the relationship between the school education and social inequality. In order for learners to acquire and use English independently with the critical consciousness, a critical approach to the text is required. It is important to become an active reader in the problems of the power and ideology inherent in the text so that it can critically analyze and create new meanings. Accordingly, by conducting a research campaign, learners are able to actively and critically accept text. The research campaign is conducted using the concept of the non-visualization. The story used as an example in campaign compared race to animal fur colors to help the students understand easily. What this study depicts through this activity is that if only a particular race appears too biased, it would be difficult to have a diverse view of it, which could lead to racial bias. With this intention, the campaign has time to retouch the sense of the white supremacy in the textbooks as a kind of the critical literacy, and which was common around us, so that racism could be embedded in the English textbooks. Conclusion. Therefore, this study tried to understand how racist elements appeared in textbooks, which are basic tools of English education in school, and to present the problems revealed in the textbooks and the correct direction of the writing textbooks accordingly. The visual analysis of English textbooks reveals that the image of the race presented is more than twice as different and limited to what is presented in the occupational group. Accordingly, through a survey, this research tries to find out the problems of the limited racial images in the textbooks from the student perception of race and the critical consumption from this. As an alternative to problems, this research attempts to retouch campaign as a part of a critical literacy to improve the students' awareness by implementing research campaign. Hence, this study shows if the content and values that contain the racist elements are continuously and frequently exposed and uncritically accepted through the textbooks. The learner will have a personal bias against race. There are some limitations to depict this study. Of course, a lot of things is left here, but among them, first, the analysis does not replace all textbooks. Second, only secondary school textbooks. This research did not handle elementary school textbook or other courses. Last, it did not explore the textbooks that are dealt with in the private education because this research only handled the public education. From this research, it is needed to provide more detailed directions to improve the learner's racial problems awareness. Yes, and thank you for listening, and thank you for coming to see my presentation. Thank you.